Hi everyone. I know it's been a while, but I'm back. Anyways, today in this video, I'm going to show you how to create absolutely stunning black and white portraits from a color shot. And I'm going to use Adobe Camera Raw as well as Photoshop. So let's get into it. This is straight out of the camera. These are three gorgeous little boys, a local photographer here in my town, and I just really loved the bond that they had, and it was super fun to shoot them. Anyways, so the lighting setup for this was just one large Octa camera left and a reflector camera right. That was pretty much it. I feathered it, and it was, you can see that there's a lot of light in the background. I shot this at f3.5 with my 105mm from Sigma, and my ISO was at 50. So the first thing that we're going to do is just come in and do our basic adjustments to RAW. And just real quick, down here you can see I'm working in ProPhoto RGB for color space, 16-bit depth, and I'm going to export this as a smart object. And I always do, just in case I need it to be, at least I have the option, right? So in the old days, I used to always export as a smart object because I would want to create a copy of that and do some adjustments and mask it off. But nowadays, we do have the masking feature here. So let's just get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is just pull up the blacks a bit because I can see right here, they're a little clipped, and you can see on your histogram. We just want to bring back some of the detail, little increase in shadows, and we're going to reduce those highlights just a little bit. I'm going to increase the clarity a little bit. Now we're going to go into our masking. We're going to select our subjects, and I love how the AI does a really good job at selecting subjects in this. We're going to click here on the three little dots, and we're going to invert this, and now we're going to reduce the exposure in the background. We want it to be really dark so that the kids pop out, but as you can see when I do this, there's going to be a little bit of haloing on some of the edges. And so what you can do for that is you can add a brush, and then you can just brush it on a little bit. I'm just going to put this down to 1. I don't want it very big, and I just want to add a little bit to the mask. I don't mind if it's darker than it should be. I just don't want it to have that white halo. And that's okay because I'm going to end up making, their hair a little bit darker anyway. And right in here we can see that that really didn't get applied. I don't feel like I have the most control with this brush tool in masking. It's not perfect at all. That's not bad. Right in there you can see the light through his hair. I think this here should be darkened down a bit. I'm not really worried about that. Same with this. This will be darkened down as well. But that's good enough. That's a good start, right? We're just looking for a start. Okay, let's go back to our basic menu, and now we can see we want to probably reduce the overall exposure a bit, right about there. Okay, let's just open this now. And what's interesting about doing portrait work is you can really see the difference in the skin tones of every child. Like this little boy has a very light pink kind of complexion. He's got a pink mix yellow, and he's very yellow. It's always so interesting to me how that happens. good. Go ahead and flatten, and now we're just going to crop it to the perspective that we want. So clear that out, and I want it to be really close, but I want enough space around the image to add like a really dark halo, if that makes sense. So something like that. I'm just going to add a blank layer, fill it with black, pull it underneath this one, and now I'm going to go on top, and I'm going to go to a gradient, and I'm going to choose radial, and I'm going to reverse it, and I'm going to scale it to 200. Dither. Okay. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply, and I'm just going to Command J, and I'm just going to keep adding more layers until it looks the way I want it to. So right about there. So there's 10 copies of that. I'm just going to merge all of them together like so. And add a mask. Make sure you have a soft black brush at 100, and we're going to paint them back. That looks blended and nice. I'm not digging this, so let's try something. Let's go brightness adjustment layer and just reduce that brightness like so. Invert that mask, and we're just going to paint that effect kind of over here, because we don't want to turn their arms black with the vignette. Sorry about this. I will turn the volume off on my stupid phone. And yeah, then you have just a little bit more control over the brightness of their arms, because we don't want it too bright. So you can see how they're kind of fading into the background now, right? Okay, I think that's good. Just feather that mask out and feather this mask out. And we're going to go ahead and flatten this. And I think I might actually just crop it back in this way. Sometimes how you crop an image really affects the impact of the image, right? I think that's better for what we're going for. And we've already got, you know, his arms down here a little less bright. Go ahead and flatten this. So as far as general retouching, what I would do on this image, a couple of things. So you can see how the brother is a little softer than this brother, and there's some hair on his face. So let's just really quickly just sample and get rid of this. So I'm using the spot healer, but I'm using the sample, right? I find that this one just is more accurate than if you just use the one that where Photoshop chooses what it samples to fix whatever it is you're trying to fix. I mean, that's good for some things, but I just find this has more control. So yeah. And you know, he's almost in puberty, so he's probably going through a few hormone changes, and he's gonna have a couple of imperfections on his perfect face. All right, so just a couple little things, nothing too major. Yeah, see how soft this little dude is? So we're gonna have to make him not so soft. Now there's a couple of different ways obviously that you could do it. You could go into Topaz, sharpen AI, and just sharpen this little guy. Or you could try to use some sharpening in Photoshop. So we are going to sharpen him in Photoshop first, because most people don't have Topaz Sharpen AI. Although it is a good tool. It's not as fantastic as I had hoped it would be, but you know, it works for some things. So yeah, just a couple of little fixes to this little dude. And I do think that it's important to not necessarily retouch boys, kind of like men, right? Like with men, I will remove obvious skin blemishes and, you know, things like that, but scars I will leave. I don't do any skin softening on men either. I just prefer them to be, I guess, more manly. You know, men are not supposed to be blurry and perfect. They're supposed to be manly. And I feel the same with little boys. I think, you know, just leave them with all of their imperfections. But blemishes nobody likes, so let's get rid of those. I don't know what little dude has in his lip here, but we'll get rid of it. So yeah, that's about it. Nothing too extreme. And I know a lot of people would probably get rid of the dark bags under their eyes, and the way that I would do it is I would just use a curves adjustment, and I would make sure my flow is down to 1, and all I do is, using a 1% flow, is just come in and really minimize those dark circles. Now they're going to be a different color as well, so you could just add a color blend mode to a blank layer and come on in and sample the colors around the dark circles and then kind of blend the colors in. That's typically the way that I do it. But this is a great technique for removing any kind of unwanted shadows or darker areas on the skin. And I do this all the time when I'm just doing a nice clean retouch on a portrait of pretty much everybody. Like I'll just quickly come in and lighten up any areas that I find distracting to the eye. Like that. And it can be helpful too if you add a black and white adjustment layer on top and reduce the reds, because that's going to really show you all of the little shadows and areas that you're going to want to use this technique on. Let's look at the before and the after. So that's before and that's after. See how we've just gotten rid of some shadows. Just like that. And then we can go click on that layer because that was our lighten layer. And you can just reduce the fill ever so slightly just to make it look a little more natural. So I think that's good. Okay. Now, a lot of people will lighten the eyes, right? And a way to do that is to create an exposure adjustment layer, and then you can just increase the exposure. I'm only looking at the eyes, right? Something like this, Command or Control I. I'm going to put my flow at about 10, and we're just going to zoom in, and we're going to add some light into their eyes. You could probably go higher than 10 actually, because I really want to make that catch light pop, and it's not exactly popping the way I want it to. I do not want to do that. Don't want to do that. I just want to focus on the iris. Don't use this exposure adjustment layer on any skin because it's gonna turn it bright pink. But it usually works really good for just really brightening up the catch lights too, and adding a bit of contrast to the eyeballs. Alrighty, so that's pretty much the general retouch that I would do for boys. Now let's focus on a little bit of contrast. So duplicate your layer, filter, sharpen, unsharpen mask, and I'm going to do 20% and the radius is going to be 20. Click OK. And now I'm just going to hold down my Alt or Option key, click mask, and now I'm just going to, at 100%, brush that onto the faces of the boys. So just on the skin. And this is just adding some contrast. We're still going to have to sharpen this little guy up because he's still pretty blurry. So that just adds a pop of contrast. So before and after, you can see, let's zoom right in so you can see. So that's before and that's after. It's just added a nice bit of contrast, but he needs to be sharpened. So let's go ahead and flatten and duplicate your layer, change your blend mode to linear light, go to filter, high pass, other, high pass, and we're just looking at him. So that already looks way better. And I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key, and now I'm just going to brush onto this little dude because he was soft, and I think that fixes it for the most part. Now he matches them a bit more. I could probably reduce my flow to around 20 and just add a little bit more sharpness to their eyes, because I do think that his are way sharper than theirs now. So you kind of want them all the same. Okay, that looks better to me already. I actually like a little bit of sharpening on their lips, especially because they got such fabulous lips. And now we can flatten. All right. Okay, so that's how I like to edit boys. Very natural, not a lot of work. Now, normally I would go and I would do that color correction around the eyes, but because we're converting this to a black and white, who cares? Okay, so my favorite, I have beautiful black and white actions in my store, but if you just want to do it manually, I go to adjustment layers and then I go gradient map. I turn this method down here to classic, and you choose your gradient here, right? So this is already set up for me. I want black on the left and pure white here. But watch this. If I click the black color, this means how deep the shadows are. So if I reduce this, see how the lights get brighter? But I like the moodiness, so I'm actually going to increase it, right? And then same thing here. If I pull my whites up, they're going to get brighter. And you really want that high contrast look to your black and white images. So click OK. I usually dither it because that helps with texture, all that other fun stuff. And this is my black and white conversion. And you know, obviously this is pretty too in color, but I really like the black and white. I think it just adds all the moodiness to it. And then you could easily go into Adobe Camera Raw and add some grain. I'll show you how I do it. I'm just going to stamp this layer. So I would go into Camera Raw filter, and we're going to go down to effects, and we're just going to zoom in, and we're going to add some grain. So this is a technique I use all the time, especially if I have a model in or a subject or a client with really bad skin, like prone to acne and everything, and you have to frequency separation the crap out of it and it just looks so plastic. I always add grain, and that in itself is enough texture to add back to your subject to make it look a little bit more realistic, right? So I just added some grain, which really helps with skin texture and stuff like that. And I'm going to come into my curves, and I'm going to place a point in the lower quadrant right here. I'm not pulling it down though. I might pull it up a smidge right about there, but then I'm going to pull this side up, and then you get that beautiful matte look, which is super nice. You can increase your highlights just a smidge so that they pop even more. Click OK. And now you can really see the difference from the before and the after. And obviously, if you wanted to, you could add some clarity. So duplicate your layer, come back up here into your Camera Raw, and you could even add a little bit more clarity. So the clarity will really help them pop out right about there, and maybe just a smidge more sharpening, something like that. And then same thing, so because I duplicated my layer before I went into Camera Raw, now I can just mask, and then I can paint that onto my kids' faces. And this just kind of, you know, helps them pop out a little bit, especially if you do apply that matte, that overall matte to your image. Alrighty, so let me know what you think. If you have any other ways that you like to convert to black and white, I would love to hear about it. But that's just a really simple, very classic portrait of three brothers converted to black and white. Have a great day. See you in the next video.